In this video we're going to look at how we can use comments, and as well as comments we're also going to start talking about subs, so quite an important video, this one. Comments are a way to describe what different parts of code are doing, and they are notes to the software developer, but that the actual end user will never ever see them. So let's have a little look at how comments work in Small Basic. In most languages we use a hash key to denote a comment, and then we can write a comment. Small Basic's different. We use an apostrophe or just a one indentation speech mark. So I just hit that character. You notice it's turned green to show me it's a comment, and I can say hello, this was coded by Tom. So this will not change what our program does at all. I can write absolutely whatever I want in a comment and it won't modify what actually happens with the code at all. For this reason, let's say for example when we run our program at the moment, we've got a line of code that says you cannot resize the window, so I can't drag this window size out anywhere. So if I wanted to temporarily not be able to do that, I could comment out that code. So if I put a little comment in there, you'll notice it now believes that this isn't a line of code, that this is actually just a comment to the user. And if I run my code again, you'll notice that that line of code is no longer executed, which now allows me to resize the window as I see fit. To delete that, I'm just going to take that character back out. So why are they mostly used? Well, comments are to hopefully help somebody who is looking at your code and be able to help them understand it. It's also if you're writing large amounts of code, so you can go back and understand what you were doing in that section. So in this case, I can see that this bit is just setting up some constants. So I'm just going to make this code say set up constants. So it's just a comment that just says what this part of the code is doing. I can then have another comment in here that will talk about what this bit does, and this is just set up graphics window, which is exactly what it does. It sets its height, its width, and its background color, etc., etc. What does this bit do? Well, it creates a circle, so I can just put creates circle, and this just helps me when I go back to and I can just see, oh, that block of code did that. So when I'm trying to fix something or change something later on, I can easily go back and modify these points. You will have to use comments during your coding progression. However, expert developers and the real elite out there would actually argue comments aren't a good thing. And part of the reason why for this is, let's say we wanted to go and add a line of code in here, and this is just one reason. We wanted to say, let's say the user can put in the level. So level equals, let's just get it from the text window from them. Text window dot writeLine. So it's text window dot read. And let's just say the user can enter in what level they'd like to start on in our game. So in this situation, this is not actually a constant, because I might allow it to change later on in the game, in which case this would be a variable. Now my comment up here would be outdated, so I'd have to update my comment as well. Now there's nothing that you can do to test to make sure your comments are up to date. This is something that only the user refers to. And this is just one reason why comments can be a problem. They can get outdated and then cause further confusion later on. So if you're not going to use comments, how do you make sure that your code is easy to understand? The biggest thing is having very well named variable names and subnames, which we'll talk about next. So it's really, really important to name your variables accurately. I think circ is fairly straightforward. If we were going to have multiple circles, I'd need to name them very clearly to explain which circle was which and for which purpose. graph window X. I think that's fairly straightforward and easy to understand. If you wanted to write it in full, you could do. It's much better to have a long variable name that's clear to understand than a short variable name that doesn't really explain what that variable is storing. So let's look at how we can also use subs to help us collect our code together and some of the other advantages of those. Now in Small Basic we do call them subs, and actually in most other languages we'd refer to them as either functions or as methods, depending on the language that you're using. So in here we're going to go and create a sub. So I'm going to say sub set up, and I'm just going to just call this sub setup, which sets up, we'll call it setup game, assuming this will be a game eventually. We can then end the sub that we create, and I'm going to go and end it down here because I think this whole section is doing our setup. And arguably you could say that this creating the circle is doing part of the setup. So why don't we just say setup window, or setup graphics window, graph window. And you notice I've debated a little while around what I'm actually going to call it, and it's worth spending that time. It's so valuable later on. And again, if you add stuff to your sub that's doing more things, you might then later on decide, actually I need to rename what my sub is because it's no longer doing the same job anymore, or create that into a separate sub. So you'll notice over here it talks about the full name is a subroutine, but we just use sub to denote that. So this setting up constants is not actually happening there, it's actually happening in here. So I'll just move that comment inside. Oops. And you'll notice that it auto indented initially. Because this is inside the sub, we should have this all indented. So I'm going to lazily right click and go to Format Program, and this will sort out all of my indentation for me. I'd encourage you to get used to indenting yourself and getting it right in the first place, because not all IDEs like Small Basic here, where it will do a lot of these tools for us. I might want to comment to say what the sub does again, but I think my variable name's so clear that I don't think I'm going to bother in this case. But in a lot of cases you will want to explain what your sub does if you're not comfortable with it. So we've done that. Let's just create this as a sub that just says sub create circle or make circle, whatever you want it to be. I'm actually just going to call it circ because I think that's descriptive enough. And create circle is what this whole sub does. And of course I need to indent both of these lines of code because they're inside the sub. And afterwards, of course, we just need to end that sub. Now if we run our code now with subs, you'll notice that nothing happens. Quite disappointing. And the reason nothing happens is the way that subs or functions or methods work is that when they are executed, when the program is executed, it says, right, sub, okay, you've got a sub here. I want to see, okay, you want me to do all these jobs when that sub is run. Okay, that's fine. And I see you've got another sub here and that can run these jobs. That's fine. It doesn't actually run the jobs. It just says, okay, you've created this tool that you can use later on, and I will run that when you tell me to. So because we do need these two things run next, let's just write the line of code that says run that sub. So I'm going to write the name of the sub, and Small Basics autocomplete has come and saved us once more. See a telephone icon, and that's to refer to calling the sub, which basically means to run it at that point. But we use the term call. So we call that sub, set up graphics window. So if we run this now, we'll set up the graphics window, but we won't create our circle. And that's purely because we haven't run that sub yet. So we can close this once more, and we'll add one more line of code that says, well, can we go and create our circle? So it was create, autocomplete kicked in, create circle. Notice that we open and close brackets after the name of the sub that we're calling. Why do we do that? In traditional programming languages, this denotes inside the brackets what inputs you're going to give to that sub or functional method. You'll notice that these are actually used with some of the built-in tools, such as we've got this built-in method here called shapes.move. And move takes an input within the outer brackets here, and this is the input we gave it. So we gave it 3 different inputs. Now we often call those arguments. We gave it this argument, we gave it this argument, which is quite a long argument, but essentially just returns one number, and this argument here, which again will just return one number. So some methods, subs or functions, do take inputs and some don't. For example, here's a built-in one, getRandomColor, that doesn't take any arguments. It doesn't need anything to be able to do its job. You'll find that some will, some won't. The ones that you create in Small Basic cannot take inputs. This is very uncharacteristic of programming languages, and in my opinion is the biggest element of Small Basic that prevents it from being like most traditional programming languages used in industry. However, as you can see, they'll do the job as required. So what's the benefit of subs? Well, if I wanted to create a second circle later on or create another circle, I could reuse this sub over and over again. Let's say I cleared the graphics window. So let's say I wanted to wipe everything away and then start again. We could, after we've run those subs, I could do graphics window.clear. If I could spell clear correctly. And if we run that now, it will create the graphics window and then immediately clear it, so we don't have our circle on it anymore. So maybe we should put a delay in so we can see this happen in progress. So program.delay, and let's just make it do 1 second, 1000 milliseconds, and then we'll do another delay, and then we will show our circle. Create circle. If we run that one more time. So we create a graphics window, we wait a second, we clear it, and we wait a second, and then we create the circle again. So you can see that they are very useful for being able to do a same job over and over again, which you'll find will be quite common practice as you progress through.